Hello. Welcome to the woods. Very, very special guest today. My guest today is Whittaker Woods. And so I brought my book. I figured I would tell you the story of how I started talking to trees. I started this podcast, I think mostly to hear the voice of other people who also talk to trees. But then I realized, wait, some of you haven't read my book. Some of you don't know how I began talking to trees. So I brought the book. Once when I was 3, I brought the glasses. And so the first chapter starts with, don't worry, I'm not reading you the whole book. The first chapter starts with, when did it all begin? This business of talking to trees and plants. Maybe I was born with it, a gift from another life. Or maybe it began right there with the buffalo grass tickling my belly, waiting for the school bus to rattle down the gravel road to my dad's gas station. And so the first story continues. When I was a kid, I grew up in New Caledonia, a small island between Australia and New Zealand. And so I was the only white kid in my grade. It was a really small village, Wyld, about, 300 people. Most of them lived in tribes. And then my dad had the one gas station, the only gas station on the entire East Coast. And so every morning I would run down to the road and there was a patch of mimosa. Now I'm about, 6, 7 years old by then. And I had like this whole ritual where I would caress their leaves and they would close. And then I would touch just the tip, and they would close just the tip. And then I would touch it in random ways, and it would kind of close and be like, okay, that's enough now. We're done playing. And then that was it for the day. She wouldn't play anymore. And so if you're 7 years old, and even if you speak to mimosa, the air on your breath will close her. So if you grow up with a plant that responds, of course you know that plants are intelligent. It wasn't even a question. Plus, in New Caledonia, there is carnivorous plants. And so I would catch flies that were trapped on my windowsills. I never killed a fly on purpose to feed a plant, but I would find these flies and I would put them in and they would just get digested. Now, how can a plant not have intelligence if it is capable of eating meat? You know what I mean? And so I grew up in this magical world where I didn't have any friends my age, but I had friends everywhere. The plants were my friends. And it sounds so sad, like, oh, poor girl, she didn't have any friends. But it wasn't like that. It was normal for me. I was barefoot every day. I would run up the hills. I would meet my friend Nyauli. That was a big tree that I could climb. And I just felt every plant was a friend, and some were closer friends and some were not. Now, fast forward, how many? 40 years. Fast forward 40 years. And in that time, I came to the U.S., and I traveled the world, and I became a scientist. And science had answers, right? Science explained to me why mimosa closed, and there was beautiful biological mechanism. And so it was just as magic, but it wasn't a conversation anymore until the September of 2016. So I was 45 years old, and I react very badly to pot, to cannabis. I tried tiny, tiny, minuscule amount, and I'm off into other dimensions for days, and I can't come back, and I black out, and I don't even know who I am, where I am. I can't move my body. It's horrible. I don't like it. And so my thought was always, well, I'm so sensitive to substances. If I can't even do cannabis, which everybody does, I lived in Oregon for a while, it's like everybody is living in some sort of symbiotic relationship with this plant where their life is devoted to this plant, and in exchange the plant gives them, I don't know what they give them because I don't get it. My point is, I never wanted to try anything else. I didn't want to try mushrooms, nothing. I mean, nothing at all. And then, September 2016, I was hiking the Appalachian Trail and I got sick in Vermont. Landed in the hospital. That's like a whole different story. I landed in the hospital with a mystery ailment. They never figure out what I had. And when I got out, okay, I'll tell you a little bit of that story because it's pretty whacked. The day I got out of the hospital, I stayed at my friend's by the Leafs. We'll talk about the Leafs. And I had this dream that I had cancer and that I was going to die. And so when I woke up, I thought, okay, let's say this is true. Let's say I have cancer. Let's say this is cancer. I'm going to die. And I ran through my life and all the adventures I've had and all the travels I've done and all the loves. And I just felt full. And I felt there was nothing in my life missing. And if I die, I did well. I die happy. And then I grabbed my phone and I signed up for Tinder. And I watched myself do it. And I was like, this is a very odd behavior. And the first picture that showed up was this man named Jim. And then I proceeded to say no 500 times until it said, you have exhausted the greater Boston area. And I was like, well, I guess it's this guy Jim or nothing. So we matched and I picked him up. And Jim was a conscious carpenter. So he would actually talk to trees before he felled them in order to build whatever he built. And I had left that world of talking to trees, and it sounded so, I think it clicked something like, oh, I used to do that. I want to do that again. Jim also was the man who introduced mushrooms into my life. And so suddenly because now we're dating, this bag of a pound of cubensis appeared in my life. And to celebrate the arrival of the fungi, we gifted all my friends 1 gram each. And so that was my first real-time microdosing. And so I ate 1 gram of mushrooms. And as long as my friends were tripping, nothing happened because I think I have this protector in me that it's like, oh, I got to make sure everybody's all right. But the moment they all went home, I climbed into the truck and I was backed against some leaves. And we'll go to the leaves. And I felt this odd feeling. And it wasn't a human feeling. I mean, of course, I'm on mushrooms and it's my first time. So how am I supposed to know what this is? But I'm still a scientist, right? So I figured, okay. So I thought that might be a tree feeling, but it was a little far-fetched. And so Jim was resting next to me. He was also on mushrooms. I think he had 2 grams. And I put my hand on him. And when I put my hand on him and didn't look at the tree, then I could feel all sorts of feelings that were not mine, but they were definitely human feelings. And I was like, okay. So then I removed my hand and I concentrated on the tree. And I felt a tree feeling. And this idea appeared in my mind that I should microdose every day and learn to talk to trees in Whittaker Woods. So let's get to the leaves now. I'll be right back. Okay, we are here. Come with me. So these right here, these are the leaves that I used to live with. You see how they would climb into the truck. And when I woke up in the morning, they would be right there with me. And this right here, this is the first tree that I felt a feeling from. I'll tell you the story when we're back in the woods. All All right, so now you've met the actual leaves that I slept under, and you've met the actual tree that I first spoke to. So let me read you that part. Chapter 3, Whittaker Woods, North Conway, New Hampshire, September 2016. I carefully twisted the capsule open. Tap, tap, tap. A tiny amount of powder spilled onto my square of chocolate, no more than a dusting of grains, too light to weigh. I closed my eyes and whispered over the tiny offering. Hello, mushrooms. My intent today, as it is every day, is to learn how to speak with trees. Thank you for helping me. Then quickly, I ate it. That was all the ceremony I had time for. I was already late for work. And so then I set off. And so in that chapter, I explained that I've actually been talking to the Catmobile, my truck, for decades. And there is no believe it or no believing. It's like, it would tell me, I need an oil change. It would tell me, hey, my whatever belt is about to break. And I know it comes from the truck because I'm not that mechanically inclined. And so how would I know that a blah, blah, blah belt is about to break if the truck didn't tell me? And so I thought, if I can talk to the truck, I can talk to trees. And so I would come down, past the oak, and then I would get to the portal. And at the end of this video, I will put the entire recording of Whittaker Wood as it was. Unfortunately, they have logged it since, and so the portal no longer exists. Let me show you. So we were approaching the exact location where the portal used to be. It was right here. It was like these giant trees, and their branches would cross. And so when you would arrive here, here's the end of the pavement. You would arrive here, and these trees created like a little portal. And when you walk through the portal, then you'd be in the woods. Now there's a different kind of portal. No parking, no parking. Yeah. Nobody told me. Nobody told me that they had logged it because they knew I would cry, which I did. So yeah, that was pretty devastating. So how did I actually do it? So it was a 6-year process, but I came here only every 2 years. So that first year, in 2016, I would look at the tree and I would try to feel what it's like to be this tree. And at first it was really blurry. Plus, it's the whole time you feel like you're making it up, right? It's like, trees are not talking to me. Come on now, I'm a scientist. But there would be a difference. Like right now, my phone that I'm recording this to is hooked to this tree. And this tree feels very confused and curious. What is this human doing? And right there, there's a big pine. It's not even paying attention to me. It's looking down the hill. And they all have, I mean, I wouldn't call it gender, but they have feminine or masculine essence. That's the first thing that I'm usually able to, like I look at a tree and I can feel in the balance if it's more on the feminine or more on the masculine side, based on my human understanding of those energies. And then usually there is a level of attention, how attentive the tree is. There are some trees that are turned toward me, like this one is definitely turned toward me, and that one is definitely not. It's not that interested in talking. And so you have to find the trees that are interested in talking to you. And so every day I would walk to work. I worked as a barista in a cafe. I would walk through these woods. It would take me, I don't know, maybe 18 minutes, give or take. And I would look at the trees and look at the trees and look at the trees. And this is in movement because I still have to get to work. So I didn't specifically sit with the trees. I just like, it's like pinging them. And the first one that really began to respond consistently was what I call the majestic oak. And I mean, that oak, I was in love with that oak. Actually, let me find that passage for you. The trees I had first met in spring's tender green deepened to summer's lush shades, then darkened further before bursting into the warm, fiery hues for which the Northeast is known. With each passing day, gradually, almost as imperceptibly as the shifting hues, my relationship with the woods evolved. Some trees began to stand out. I greeted each one equally as I walked by, but with some, I felt extra trepidation. Some were becoming friends, while others remained acquaintances or strangers. Some I hugged frequently, especially the fragrant pines on the trail and the two sentinels at the entrance. And then there was the oak. Oh, I was in love with that oak. It stood outside of Whittaker Woods, in a patch of well-groomed grass at the corner of Oak Road and Mechanic Street. Once its leaves turned red, I stopped and gaped at it in astonishment every day, twice a day. You are so beautiful. Recognition. The majestic oak was the first, aside from the maple above my truck, from whom I sensed a response. Its energy shifted when I approached, like a subtle acknowledgement rather than an overt greeting. Steady, knowing, sovereign. I never trampled the private lawn to approach it. It wasn't the kind of tree one hugged. It was much too regal for that. No, when I sensed its recognition, I bowed from the sidewalk with a hand on my heart, and it seemed to like it. Whether the oak spoke to the trees of Whittaker Woods, I never knew, but once it recognized me, the others began to as well. Not in movement, but in energy, subtle shift and turning of attention toward me when I greeted them. One by one, they responded, as if the oak had vouched for me, granted me passage into their world. After that, my progress was exponential, like a root spreading underneath and fast forward, until winter cut it short. So that was year one. All I achieved year one was recognition and becoming friends with some of the trees. And then what did I do? 2016, Jim and I drove out west, paying our way across the country, selling mushrooms, and then Jim and I separated and he flew back to Maine. I just decided to drive to Alaska. So I drove 7,000 miles total. I got a job at a pig farm in Tok, Alaska. And I just wanted to go to Alaska, and I got this job, and I went, and, like, the moment I arrived at the pig farm, just the smell, I was like, oh, what have I done? So I left. I drove the Denali Highway, which made me cry every day because it was so beautiful. And then I came back down, and I landed in Canada. And that year, which was 2017, was the bicentennial in Canada where all the parks were free. And so I went to all of them. Jasper, Banff, incredible. Landed in Nelson, painted a house, started growing my dreads. Yeah, that's when it started. Aw, the baby dreads. Look like a wild woman. And then I got a job working at a cannabis farm, and then I went to Sedona and worked as a guide, and then I came back. I felt the call. I was working at a guide in Sedona, and suddenly I was like, I have to be in Whittaker Woods. So I drove in 3 days. And when I arrived here, it was incredible. I'll read you that passage. North Conway, New Hampshire, 2018. I quickened my steps down Mechanic Street, heart pounding with anticipation. It came into view, and I ran the last few feet to the corner. My oak. My, it was even more magnificent than I remembered. Taller, wider, wiser, greener. I laughed with delight and bowed as I used to, with a hand pressed on my chest. Hello, Oak. I've missed you. I sensed its recognition. It felt like gladness in my direction. It remembered me. And how wonderful I could perceive its attention without magic mushrooms. So that second year, I didn't use mushrooms at all. By then I was confident that I could talk to trees, and it was just a matter of refining how to do that. And so I figured, that first time when I was on mushrooms, it was really in contrast to my own feelings, right? It was like I felt something and I was like, okay, that is not a human feeling. It must be a tree feeling. So I figured the best way to do it is to really, really know my inner landscape intimately. What do my feelings feel like? And as much as I disliked meditating, I knew that was the way. So luckily, at the local grocer where I worked, the employees could take the meditation class for free. And that's when I met Leah. And Leah is a main character in this book. She's essential in many chapters, including the ones involving jaguars, which come later. But I learned to meditate. And I mean, do you ever really learn to meditate? It's more like I learned that I cannot quiet my mind. I learned that I am very good at focusing my attention. So that's the meditation I do. When I sit with a tree, I focus. I just 100% of my attention is on this tree. And everything else, and there's a bit of a blurriness that needs to happen, because if my eyes look at the bark, then I'm going to become fascinated by how beautiful the bark is. If I'm listening, then I'm going to listen to the birds. And so all the five senses need to be blurry, and you need to really be in the space of open blurriness. And that is when you will feel something that doesn't feel normal to your inner system. And so in 2018, I spent the whole summer practicing being blurry with the trees. And I started to really get more, rather than just a recognition, I started to get more feelings. Some of them felt joyous. Some of them felt anxious. They have a whole range of, and the hardest part, of course, for us humans is you feel this feeling, and then you have to anthropomorphize the feeling to understand it. Is it accurate? I don't know. But I kind of compare, well, the closest thing I know that kind of maybe feels like that is joy. And so that's joy. And there's different kinds of joy. There is the joy when you hug a tree. You might feel their joy. There is the joy when sometimes they laugh. Like I was trying to hug this really, really big oak, and my hands, I was a pine actually, and my hands could not get around, and I felt the tree was so amused that I was so short, basically. And so the whole second time went like this, and at the end, I left again. I drove to Oregon, work on another cannabis farm, and with the money I made, I walked from the border across Enza Borrego, and then walked solo across Death Valley because they said it couldn't be done. And then I started on the Pacific Northwest Trail. So I started in Montana, and I walked all the way to eastern Washington. And there's a chapter about that in my book, about how walking through logging area, once you have started learning to talk to trees, it's just too devastating, and I just couldn't do it. And this chapter, I think I tried to keep it balanced, because I did meet a man in the end who makes a living from the lumber industry, and there is a sort of love that they have for the forest, and it's different than mine, but it's just as valid. And so there is no judgment, just the knowing that for me, I cannot be in logging areas, including, this one, I actually took a side trail to come talk to you because the trail where I used to walk is all logged and it's down there, and I just can't. Like I start crying. Yeah. So I had to quit that trail, and I ended up going to Costa Rica and meeting a jaguar who told me I needed to study cacao, and my life went. I don't know what path I was on. I don't even remember. But suddenly my life became everything about cacao. I dreamt in cacao. I bought a chocolate machine. I learned how to make chocolate. I was obsessed. And then there was 2020. How fun was that? So 2020, I was in Andersonville in North Carolina with my cacao beans, being so in love with these cacao beans. It was a great time. I'm sorry for all the woes in the world, and I'm grateful I escaped them. So as soon as I could, I came back here. And that was the year when I really learned that this is home. And I will read you that passage because you're still here. You're still here. 2020. North Conway, New Hampshire, 2020. I stood in the middle of Whittaker Woods on my first full day back, turning slowly, taking it all in. The familiar pine scent, the soft stir of leaves, the wide trunks I remembered and the saplings I didn't. The thrill of our reunion was as potent as in years prior, yet different. Rather than a rush of excitement, my body landed, a settling that grounded my bones. I had been away, and yet, had I really? What was this feeling? Dod in all at fin Nord. A memory of a painted wooded sign I'd once seen in the green woods of Snowdonia in Wales appeared in my mind. The translation below read, "Returning to my trees." But a deeper meaning carried the energy of returning to a balanced state of mind. These, here, were my trees. Yes, the trees nodded with a felt sense of, yes, you will always be welcomed here. And it is such my pleasure to be able to share these woods with you. Even now, even with some of them having been cut, there is a peace here. There's a friendliness here that I have not found. You know, the jungle trees in Costa Rica, they don't really want to talk to you. They have all these other trees to talk to. And some of the trees in Maine are flat out hostile. And then there's the Joshua trees of Death Valley, and they have contempt. The ponderosas in Arizona and California, those are friendly trees, and they like talking. But these here are home. So in the end, how do you learn how to talk to trees? I don't actually know. All I know is what I did. And I'm sharing it here in case you want to try it. Maybe it would work for you. And you don't actually need the mushrooms, though if you want to, please be my guest. But basically, the first year, it was all about intent and dedication. I wanted to learn how to talk to trees, and I never deviated, and I was at it every single day. I walked through the woods every day, and I would ping them. And that first year was all about learning to receive. Like, that tree wants to talk. That tree doesn't want to talk. That one is responsive. That one is curious, right? But it's like, they're not really words yet. They're more like, okay, that one turned toward me. That one turned away. All right, that's the first year. The second year, an entire summer and fall again with full dedication. I mean, I was stubborn about it. I really want to talk to these trees. It was all about learning myself. Like, what is the texture of my own feelings? And in contrast, I can learn what that tree feeling is. And then I can compare, like, well, this is what my joy feels like. This is the closest thing I have to this tree feeling that I feel. And so it starts with feelings, like gender feelings, like this is a male tree. This is an old tree. And sometimes it's funny, their age does not correspond to their size. So you can have like a really old, wise feeling tree that is actually way more spindly than the bigger one that feels younger next to it. That's crazy. And then you also have to overcome thinking you're crazy, which that might be the hardest part, actually. And then the third year when I came, I really felt like a real dialogue now was established where it went beyond feelings. I would feel their feelings and I would share stories with them. Like I told them about the trees from the jungle and they were fascinated. They really wanted to hear it. And I started getting some wisdom. Like one tree said to me, it was a ponderosa, said to me, growing slowly, growing wisely. And that was in response to me asking about, you know how humans believe that you need to thin the forest so it grows better. And the tree basically said, this is ridiculous. That's like killing the parent so that the kid can grow better. That's not how it works. And it's a whole community. Another time I learned that trees have a common energetic signature in one location. So even though that's an oak and that's a maple and that's a pine, but that pine is more related to that oak than another pine somewhere else. And, you know, like I compared this to my geology training because I once upon a time was a geologist, where when I see a mica, I think, well, that's the same mica that I learned about when I was in the Cascades. And what the trees taught me is this is not how it works. The natural world works more like in small community where they all have this similar signature. Another thing I learned, which is related, is one time I apologized to a tree because I didn't know what it was. And I said, I tried to learn the names of trees. And as often as I tried to learn, I always forget. And the tree said, good. And it said, because if you remembered the name of trees, then you would think you know something that you have learned. And so by not remembering the names, I get to meet them as individuals. You know, that's like if you believe all individuals named Bob must wear a cap and play golf, you know, which is kind of a thing I think actually. And it's like now you meet a Bob and you're gonna think, oh, it's Bob. He must have a cap somewhere. I wonder when he's playing golf. That's the same with the trees. We think we know them and we're not meeting them as individual. So that's one thing. I learned that trees like company. They like to be like, I mean, I had to ping them because I was on my way to work, but they like when we sit with them because their sense of time is so different from ours that we really need to stop in order for them to even get a chance to feel our energy. It's two-way, you know, we're feeling them, they're feeling us. And I can talk about this for hours, but I think I would prefer you go and try it yourself. So if you're still here, I am going to put the whole footage of Whittaker Woods in its intact form before they logged it. And if you're watching this, I hope you enjoy the virtual forest bathing. And if you're listening to it, you still get that sense of the walking through the wood and the crunching and the birds. And yeah. And thank you so much if you're still here. And on that topic, you should come back. Next week, I have Sophie, and Sophie is dieted oak. And so we get to learn all about oak. So it is such a pleasure to be able to come here and talk trees and plants with you. And thank you so much. I would love it if you loved it. I would love it if you liked it, subscribe, all the things that you can do with those videos. And yeah, leave a comment. If there is a plant that you love, I am happy to find somebody to talk about it. Ciao.